Why are you keeping this curiosity door locked?
Welcome to Midnight Reel Review. This is a review for Blade Runner 2049. I am your host, Joe DePew. On my left, back in his proper spot again,
Whoop whoop.
Scott Phillips.
What's up, guys?
And on my right, Sir Patrick, looking fancy as always.
That's right. T-shirt and khakis.
Hamster t-shirt.
That's how I roll. Toad's not a graphic tee.
You should start like...
It's not a hamster or gerbil in a sports car in a wheel.
Traveling.
But he's traveling, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
You should start posting the apparel we wear for a podcast. Like, help boost sales for companies.
I think a lot of red polos and khakis is going to be the...
Dang!
So, we are here, as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about Blade Runner 2049. The apparent well-reviewed movie, yet not doing so good in the box office.
Yeah.
It's kind of an abysmal failure, sadly.
Yeah.
But
I am really disappointed, and I'll give my reasons why. Today, though, we are recording on a different mic, so if it does sound slightly off, you're going to have to deal with it, and you know what?
and if you like it better, you can say
let us
that
know.
too.
You could.
Because, yeah. I don't know.
There is that option, too.
Who
We'll
knows?
accept it.
Yeah.
We're going to have some more Wonderfully Bads, and again, we said this last time. By all means, if you have any ideas for Wonderfully Bad movies or things you really want us to talk about, let us know in the comments.
I'm sure all of us will have an opinion about something or anything anyone says at all.
Yeah.
Even if it's just wrong!
Yeah. We are going to try our hardest to keep it pretty short. If you want us to go more in depth, because we are still going to try to keep it to 30 to roughly 40 minutes. It may be about 40 minutes.
It's going to be 45 minutes.
Okay, maybe. But if
42.
if you're still interested in what we you want to hear more about what we have to say about the movie, let us know. And we are actually willing to do a much more in-depth review, giving a lot more opinion and thought on how the movie is and what it offers. On that note, I'm assuming we've all mentioned it before. We actually have all watched the original Blade Runner. So we all have gone into this movie knowing the original. How did you feel about the original, Scott?
Oh man, the original. So the original for me was a very. I don't want to use the word mediocre, but for me, that's how the movie was. Like at the end of the movie, I was kind of just coming out of it, and I was like, "Yeah, it was good." I mean, the storyline was good. It was very innovative for its time. It was a new story. It looked really good. It told a lot of interesting things.
You could use the word adequate.
Adequate's good. Why does that sound worse, though?
Mediocre and adequate is around.
It's one of my favorite jokes in news or radio.
But yeah, so I mean, when I came out of the movie, it was for me. It wasn't a movie that I came out of and I wasn't, just supremely impressed with this movie, and I wasn't, oh my gosh, this is the greatest movie of all time. I need to tell everybody to watch this.
I can't wait to get the final cut. I can't wait to get the director final cut. I can't wait to get the
12 different cuts that came out for this
They
movie.
added 45 new seconds.
And it was definitely one of those that I knew coming out of it, like, there's going to be a select group of people that I can say, hey, you need to go watch this, you'll enjoy it. It's not one of those that you can just tell all of your friends, like, everybody I know needs to see this movie because everybody's going to love it. It does have a very selective audience in my mind, and part of that is great in a way because I love having those kind of movies. Even if I'm not that target audience, I love seeing studios be willing to do that, to have those. I mean,
And it doesn't happen as often as it used to.
Correct. And I mean, it's obviously it was hugely successful, but I mean, we all know, like right now, one of my all-time favorite movies now is Deadpool. It's a movie I've been waiting for since I was like 14, and I feel like that being released was very geared towards, hey, this is going to have a very specific audience when it comes out. Now, granted, it did way better than anybody imagined it was going to, but being willing to take that chance on that selective audience is why that movie got made. So I do really respect those movies.
How about you, Patrick?
So the original Blade Runner, I definitely I remember watching it for the first time when I was probably in middle school or high school and being like, yeah, it's definitely out there. And then rewatching it like when I got out of high school, and like it's one of those movies you kind of have to just keep rewatching because you may miss something, and and for the most part I do try to like watch the new cut of anything. I kind of stopped that after watching the recut of Donnie Darko. That was terrible. Man. But yeah, for a long time I would watch every new cut of whatever just to see if it like changed the story or made it make more sense or whatever. And for the most part, the 80s and 90s were pretty much constant Philip K. Dick stories turned into movies. Total Recall. There's a ton of movies. I think the newest one was what's the Keanu Reeves and Scanner Darkly. So yeah. Scanner Darkly, yeah. So that's probably the newest one of all of the Philip K. Dick movies. But and I've enjoyed almost all of Philip K. Dick turned into movies. But yeah, for the most part, I was never like wowed. I was like, yeah, that looks really gorgeous, or yeah, that looks really cool, or yeah, but like the story never really popped for me, and I never really took to it. It was a different, it was interesting, new and different, just like Scott said, but it just never, it was never a movie that like I gravitated towards. But that's not to say it's not in my collection. I have it, but it's not something I'm ever going to be like, you need to watch Blade Runner. Like I even to prepare to watch the movie, even before we started the podcast, I watched Blade Runner, and like my wife got out of it, like got up and walked out. I was like, I can't do this after like 30 minutes. So I mean, it's clearly not made for the general public. It's definitely its own thing. It's a cult classic. I would never have considered it a hit because I don't think it ever, was a hit. But
no, for comparison to the
definitely got its following. Way later. Right. The new one I think does an incredible job of keeping all of that.
I really like Blade Runner. This was I remember watching it for the first time probably around 15 or 16. I thought it was okay at first, and a lot of it was just because I was a very distracted 15 or 16-year-old. I didn't really care about those kind of movies.
There's no way any 15 and 16-year-old can be distracted. That's impossible.
I know. But I ended up watching it again in my early 20s, and I really liked it then. I thought what it actually did, and this is something I really respected about it, for 1982, to really turn the movie onto the audience itself and basically have the audience asking these major questions. And Total Recall did it. Not the remake, but the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I thought both those movies were really interesting for their time, especially because they turned the movie around and had the audience asking major questions, and they never necessarily got the answers for it.
I would disagree with that. I think that the Total Recall didn't ask any questions because I think it was a Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle, and it was just explosions the whole time.
But as far as I think Blade Runner did also a really good job at, again, and it was not just turning the questions of what is really going on, but also a sense of moral questions. Like, as a person, how would you approach this major subject? For 1982, that was a very interesting thing to do to the audience. And I think like I enjoyed it a lot more when I was I was obviously older and I could like digest those movies a little bit better. So, I mean, I really liked it. So for me going into this movie, I was really excited to see what they decided to, like, how they take that same universe with those same characters and how are they going to, like, what is going to be different about it and what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. I think that really kind of is a nice segue.
Well, man, I think it was kind of cool to kind of point out, like, yeah, when we initially would have seen Blade Runner the first time, we were much younger. And so I think it's kind of cool for us. I think we're in that category of, you know, even though we may have not been like super head over heels in love with Blade Runner,
I'll still go watch it again.
Yeah, you still kind of fall into that cult following of it. Like, man, that's a great classic movie. You know, you go back and watch it and you're like, okay, cool. And so now we kind of got to see, I mean, essentially the same movie in a way, but like at the targeted audience age. I mean, when the original came out, it came out in
The original came out in 82.
82. So I mean, that was, I mean, for me, 5 years before I was born. So by the time, I think the first time I saw it, I was probably like 10 or 11. I think somebody was watching it, and that's definitely not the target audience for that movie at all. So I remember just being completely confused by this movie. I didn't know what was going on and all that stuff, and I had to go back and rewatch it later on. And so yeah, for this to be able to come out like at this age of my, love for movies that I have now and the entertainment I find in all these movies and stuff, for this to come out brand new for me now is just like, it's a pretty cool concept, and I enjoyed it a lot for that alone.
Yeah.
Getting into the actual movie, though, I think this is where we had a lot of different opinions.
Mad Hand. Does that mean anything to you? Like a code name or something?
I think we can all agree overall it was a very well-made movie. I mean, visually fantastic. I think the actors did a great job overall.
I totally agree with what Patrick had said earlier about this. This has got to win an award for cinematography.
Yeah, it has to.
It's a very
so
well-made
beautiful.
movie as far as like visuals, cinematography, acting.
It is a moving like art project, to the nth degree. It's like every single visual is gorgeous.
Yeah. So I think from execution-wise, kind of like we were talking about, the production value is definitely there.
Yeah. They clearly thought about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just know, if you haven't watched Blade Runner 2049 yet, realize you are going in for 3 hours. I would actually say
2 hours 47 minutes.
You're going to be there for over 3 hours if you're including credits and
getting a seat.
Yeah, this is gonna be an event. This is an event for you. So
it was so much so an event that I had to go. All right, so if I go at 7 o'clock, I woke up at 4, so that means if I go in 7, I'm not going to get out till 10. Which means I'm not going to be able to get back home until 10:30 or 11, trying to do all the math. The fact that you have to do math at all to go, instead of just going, hey, let's go see a movie, and going to see a movie, like that was kind of one of the initial problem I had with the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, as far as let's talk numbers real quick. This movie was an estimated budget of $150 million, give or take. Right now,
chump change.
Yeah. I made that last weekend.
Yeah. It was a small budget.
Gross worldwide now, so we're totaling in all worldwide sales is $156 million. So we're talking in worldwide standards, it has barely broke budget. This movie has gotten great reviews from numerous people, but it has flopped big time. And I think,
even though it made its money back, it's still considered a flop.
It is considered a flop. I think we just brought up, one of the biggest key deterrents on why people are not really willing to see this. The first one is the runtime. And I actually and just my own personal opinion on the movie, I loved the movie. I loved even though the length it was a very long movie, I still enjoyed it. It's kept true to the source material. It stayed true to the tone of it, the pace of it. The writing felt genuine. I mean, pretty much everything about that movie, if you were to watch the original Blade Runner and watch this one immediately following, that's 5 hours of your life, don't get me wrong, but you would honestly, you would feel like you would feel like it was part of that same universe. It would feel the same, and I think that's one of the reasons why I loved it so much.
Yeah, aside from the obvious upgrade in technology and all that stuff, something we talked about, it seems like it was just one movie that they just cut in half.
And Harrison Ford was able to age 30 years in a single bound.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford.
He can do whatever he wants.
Oh, spoilers. Harrison Ford's in it. He's in the sequel.
The next movie, he'll look like he did in the first one. He just bounces back and forth age-wise. So,
crashing planes.
Yeah, so that to me is a huge nod to the director for this movie to be able to really take what happened in the first one and just continue it so well without
missing a beat,
destroying it, without doing all sorts of stuff. But yeah, like I said, it is pretty long, and I think that deterred a lot of people, which sucks because it's a big back and forth. I know that Patrick and I have talked a lot about how we get kind of upset with the short attention span of moviegoers these days, right. And that's why we get these movies that we want to be really long, but are only going to be an hour, 15 minutes, an hour, 20 minutes, because they know somebody sees that 3-hour runtime, they're just not going to go see it just for that alone.
Nope.
Like, it doesn't matter, how good it could be. You could have something like It could have been like, really well done as a 3-hour movie. Even a lot of the Marvel hero movies could be done really well as, 2.5, 3-hour movies. But they know if it past that 2.5-hour mark, people aren't going to go see it. Same thing too. I know we've talked a lot about trailers revealing too much these days. Like, they just give away way too much of the plot, way too much information. And unfortunately, the studio for this one says that they think that's what the downfall for this movie was, that they didn't give enough information away in the trailers, and that's why they didn't get quote-unquote new audience. It all came down to the people that loved the original Blade Runner were the only ones that went and saw this one, and that's why it didn't make as much money.
See, and I would lean to a similar problem of like Terminator Genesis is like. See, I felt like they gave away too much in the trailers. Like, you don't need to point out that Harrison Ford is going to be in the second movie. You don't even need to, because you already have a number one star, Ryan Gosling as your main star. You have Jared Leto, who just got an Academy Award. You have the A-list actors and really good character actors on the side. You didn't need to explain that Harrison Ford was going to be in it. But that that's what they were hoping. They're like, well, if we don't point out, then all the fans are not going to go see it, because they want Harrison Ford back for the movie. And so
it would have been a nice little reveal.
I think that would have been a crazy awesome reveal to go into it not expecting to see Harrison Ford in it.
Right.
And then you get that scene, and again,
he killed it. Like, his acting was amazing. He did a really great job.
And of course, we haven't talked any kind of like
plot details,
straight timeline plot of this movie, but you go into that scene where he's going out to the desert to look for this person. I mean, you can go into it and say like, oh, okay, like maybe he's actually going to find him. But if you had not seen or heard anything about Harrison Ford being in this movie, you would have gotten to that part and been like, what is he going to find?
Skeleton like he did in the beginning?
Yeah, is he just going to be another dead? Like, is he going to be dead? Like, what's going on? And then to like get that reveal of Harrison Ford showing up would have just been like, holy crap. You might have freaked out as much as some people do when Harrison Ford died in Star Wars. And
spoilers, dude. Spoilers.
Joe and I know that some people get pretty worked up about that.
Oh man!
Theaters.
Really? Quick side story. I promise it's quick. We went to go see Star Wars: The Force Awakens for the first time. We got Thursday nights tickets. Yeah. We were there right for the first showing. We get to the movie, and it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I find it better than actually most of the prequels.
Right.
We get to the point where you see Harrison Ford going onto the bridge, and both Scotty and I call it. We know for a fact what is about to happen. Harrison Ford was going to die. So he gets to the point, and it's kind of dragging on, right? I'm your father. We got to talk about these feelings that you're having. They're not right. And then, oh, you got to help me, Dad. And he stabs him, and then someone right next to us is yelling, no! Like, he is not having with. He's not.
That dude was fully invested in the movie.
It was like he just watched his own father get stabbed. Like,
oh man!
Man.
Goodness! It added to the enjoyment of that movie so much more. So now every time I watch that scene, and I've watched it a few times since, I just think of that guy.
Yeah.
But so going back, that was a little fun story for you guys. Going back, I think one of the things is they didn't reveal a lot about the plot, and I actually enjoyed the fact that they didn't enjoy a lot about the plot. But I think the Harrison Ford reveal would have been something that would have been really interesting if they had just left that part alone.
Yeah,
I felt like they kept out all the stuff they needed to. But just the Harrison Ford bit, like, I just didn't really see it.
And that's what I'm saying.
I just didn't see the reason for that.
That's what sucks about that back and forth is I loved that they kept, I love the way they did the trailers for this. It makes me mad that they think that was wrong because, again, like I said, we have these problems of these trailers revealing way too much of movies now.
Right.
And that's why I try to go this entire year without watching trailers for movies that I know I'm going to watch and stuff. And it sucks. Like, you shouldn't have to do that. Like, I love watching trailers. I love seeing what's coming out. And I love getting, like, this, amp for a movie to go see it. But yeah, all too often now, it's like you watch a trailer and you're like, okay, cool. I know exactly what's going to happen in, all apexes of this movie from start to finish. Like,
right.
You just gave away way too much.
Yeah. See, and I think, like, and the studio could have said, well, we didn't really reveal enough in the trailer, and in my opinion, it's like I don't know what they could have added to really see that, because this movie it was never going to bring the audience they were expecting, like because the way it was made is a niche market, is very specific, and there's no way that they were going to get this mass appeal on a 2-hour 47-minute movie that is basically an art project because of like the style it is. And so they were never going to do that. And to say that they did something wrong, like so this is where the negative part of me comes out. But like the things I found wrong with the movie were, it was way too long. I felt like the plot was not interesting. In my opinion, it didn't expand the universe at all. It just continued. There's nothing changed in the universe. Nothing really changed of like what happened. What's going on, but at the same time, it didn't really change like anything about the universe. And like I had mentioned earlier before we started recording, is when I see a sequel, I expect it to expand the universe. Like John Wick, you learn about him, he's like, oh, that's a really cool universe, I kind of want to know more about that. And then they expand it entirely in the second John Wick, and you're like, holy crap, like what's going on? And then the third one, I expected it to be just utter amazement.
Nonsense.
Yeah. And so that's what I was kind of expecting, is like, okay, so we already know a little bit, this is a sequel, so we're gonna like expand the universe now, and you're gonna learn a lot more about maybe the structure of the society and the replicants, or like all this other stuff. But I mean, you didn't get any of that, and it was focused mostly on Ryan Gosling. He was pretty much the only like major character, other than the assistant to Jared Leto, that you see for the majority of the movie. And Jared Leto is in like maybe 10 minutes of the movie, but he's like presented as if he's going to be this big bad, like, major character, but he is, but he isn't. And, I don't know. It was just, I felt the plot was super disappointing. And it was like one of those things that's like, if the plot had been a much bigger plot or like story, or whatever, it would have been a much more interesting movie and worth the 2-hour 47 minutes that it is. You have to expand what you're doing. It's like Civil War was like 2.5 hours, right?
Yeah.
So, and they expanded and created this huge like rip apart, and of like all of the heroes. Nothing like that happened in this movie. Nothing changed. Everything is like moving on just like normal. Like nothing is like, if you could check in another 50 years, it'll probably be exactly the same, and nothing has changed. So, and that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, see, that's where I kind of feel differently. I felt like they presented the audience with more questions. Like I said, it stayed very true to what Blade Runner, what the original was about, what it was trying to offer. And I think what they did, though, is they presented new things to think about in relation to those questions, and not just in relation to those specific questions about whether replicants are people, and like where do you draw the line of humanity, but even further, like the fact that an AI could develop feelings. And like I said, I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as I can, but they give that kind of context, like we're starting to see these huge advancements. At what point do we start drawing the line? And they leave that up to you. And I mean, there was still obviously the major background point that Ryan Gosling was going after. And, there was obviously some resolutions, but then again, there were still a lot more questions that they left unanswered, which is that was fine for me. I did not mind that point at all. Like I said, I think they expanded it in the ways they needed to. Whether that's saying that they added, a whole new train of thought to think about, I don't think they did. But again,
I just wanted more depth.
Yeah. And like I said, I felt like and I'm talking just for myself, obviously, is I felt it presented new arguments for the questions they have asked from the first one, and giving you more things to think about, and kind of an interesting thing to see like how they went with it, and how their interactions went with the whole replicants with the society and the things that had happened. I really liked it from that point, for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's kind of interesting because I feel like we have three unique perspectives on this, because I feel like Patrick's really strong one side, Joe's really strong the other, and I feel like I'm almost like right down the middle between you two guys on this.
Right, like you're like, oh, I agree with that.
Yeah, like I'm kind of like right back and forth with you guys, because there's a lot of stuff that like. So yes, this movie is long and it does feel long, because of the way that it's paced, all that stuff, but I didn't go into this expecting anything different. I remember the original, so I went into it expecting, all right, this is going to be pretty drawn out. It's going to be time between one step and the next. It's not just going to be boom, 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 boom stuff happening. Which, it did feel like it kind of dragged on for me. It did kind of lose me up and down a little bit while watching it the first time. But there's also some things because of that I thought were done better having gone and rewatched the original right before I saw the new one. And I remember going back and rewatching the original, and a lot of stuff just happens in the original with really no explanation and kind of no build up. So
no reason why he sees the people he sees.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about in the first one where they mention that, the girl he falls in love with is a replicant and she didn't know. So she thought all these memories were real and that she was an actual person and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, cool. So when that reveal came to her, she was very broken and, all sorts of stuff. But it literally seems like from rewatching it, you go from one scene where Harrison Ford's character is super anti-replicant, doesn't care anything about him, just kind of wants to kill them all. And then it seems like the next scene, they're alone in his apartment and he's kissing her and being oh, tell me you want to sleep with me and that we love each other. And you're like, well, what just happened? How did this turn
Right. It went from all of a sudden there's a love interest. It felt kind of forced.
Yeah,
on the audience.
It felt like it.
And
you felt like you could see where the director was going and was gonna start that train, and then all of a sudden
he didn't know how to start it.
And then all of a sudden, you're at the end of the line, and you're like, oh, yep, here it goes. You're there. And so in the new one, I feel like you gotta see that build happen a lot when you have Ryan Gosling's character Kay and the AI that he has in his apartment. You see a lot more of the interaction. You see how they play off of one another. You see that emotion build between the two. And so when you get to a point of, them taking risk, or really him taking a risk with, taking her out of the home system and putting her in a mobile one and all this other stuff, you do actually kind of feel this, even if you don't care about him or the AI that he has, what emotions he's going through by doing this kind of stuff, because you got to watch that build. And I don't think you really got that in the first one. Right. So I think making it this super long runtime, you got to fill in those, say, gaps,
right,
that you
in
had.
The story of the original.
I think also the quiet moments in this one, some of them I think were a little bit ill placed personally, but there was a lot of the quiet moments because they give you that time to start really absorbing what you just saw, absorbing the interactions that you're seeing. And those quiet moments give you a lot of time as an audience to kind of just either appreciate what had just happened or what is going to happen. So you can start really getting some time to really make your own guesses of what could happen, how this is going to be approached. And I think, like I said, some of them I think were a little ill-placed and maybe or a little bit too long. But I think some of those quiet moments really added to the audience's ability to really look at what's going on, take what just happened. Because some of it's pretty intense stuff if you actually stop and think about it. You can actually sit there and actually get some time to think about it while you're still in the movie, while you're still dealing with that world.
Right. I don't know. It didn't make me want to invest any more in the world. and so I was just watching it just as like because I'm watching it. Like it wasn't, it's not like I would have got up in the middle of the theater and been like, I'm done with this. And it's still really gorgeous, really
like, ooh,
cool.
that's pretty.
Yeah. That's honestly, it's how I felt about Avatar. Like it's really gorgeous. Yeah, there's a story happening. Not invested in the characters at all. I'm not invested in the blue people. I'm not invested in the humans. It's whatever. Like, but it's a story that's happening definitely. But it was just more like, I think that's why it was like frustrating for me because I had higher expectations because, like Scotty had mentioned, like some of the other movies that the director did were Arrival, Prisoners, Sicario. So like he has original ideas and different ways he looks at stuff, and he just never. And I think he was just paying too much homage to it, to the original. So.
Well, I mean, and I I do hope this movie, like it's already met it's already technically met budget. I mean, it hasn't exceeded budget by a lot, but I hope it does well enough because I do think this movie deserves a little bit more little bit more attention than what it's getting from people, and I totally understand that it's an extremely long movie, and so there's I'm not saying that people are horrible or anything like that for not going to see it, but I do think it's definitely something people should consider.
Right. Well, least. I mean, honestly, so what if like you didn't really get that whole side interaction with the girl that I felt was like a completely unnecessary. Like I get it, like you're trying to expand on like what defines a person and who has rights and stuff like that, like you were saying before. But like let's say we just ignore that entirely. We focus on what the actual story was, which was finding the the remains, the baby of the remains, and that you find at the very beginning of the movie. Like if you just followed that one plot, and then you could still have side plots that are happening while that's happening, and it was an 1.5 to 2 hour long movie. I think that you would have reached that area where more mass appeal would have taken to it. A lot more people would see it. You're basically telling the same story that you would have, and you're not having to waste time. It's sad that like I'm now arguing to make a shorter movie, not a longer movie. But I mean, it seems like more and more time passes. They do make longer movies, but they're unnecessary to be that long. The Dark Knight did not need that last 30 minutes. The Lord of the Rings was a very intense story, but I'm sure and like I love watching the extended editions, but
well, I mean, you can see why they cut those parts out,
right? And you see why, yeah.
I guess for me though, that you're talking about the interaction with her, I think in a way that was necessary because now you're actually like delving into something even deeper with that, and you could say, well, yeah, you could have taken it out, but I think it actually added a lot to Ryan Gosling's character. And so as he started approaching situations later on in the plot, you start seeing a lot of different sides to him on that. And you kind of like, it's able to kind of define him more because you also are seeing him from not just one specific emotion, but you actually are seeing him go through a lot of different experiences that lead him up to those major points. And so I think, I mean, again, it's kind of hard to really say what it would have been or what it could have or should have been, because it was in the movie and this is how it was.
Right.
If we took that away, how would it be now? It's really hard to tell. I mean, that could have been actually the case where you could have taken that scene out and some of those extra filler scenes, cityscapes and so on, and it might have been a way shorter, more focused movie. But then again, what would we have lost, and how would that have affected the movie? It's kind of really hard to say one way or another. Again, because like I said,
well, so I think if you did take all those out, and if it was basically the same exact story, same exact plot, and everything ran the exact same way, but it was about 1.5 to 2 hours a movie, I think that's my point, is that the plot, there's no plot really there, and therefore it would have bombed in a completely different manner because there's not a plot, there's no story. Like you're basically just visually staring at a movie and that has no real plot that you haven't already heard or haven't already dealt with before. And so that's ultimately, when you go see a movie, you're going to watch the plot. You're not going to be if I wanted to look at something pretty, I would find something like a
Transformers.
yeah, that's right. It's an explosion. Yeah, no.
Transformers.
But no, I mean, there's so many other things that you could go look at. I could go to an arboretum and go look at something beautiful. I don't need a movie to show me something beautiful. And so, I mean, I think that's where I differ. Is just like I'm getting to the point. Like, I want more interesting stories. I don't need more beautiful landscapes or reasons why I need to go in an IMAX theater instead of just a normal theater. If I go to a regular theater, you should still have the same story, and I should be able to grade it the same way based on what that experience. And so I think that's what I'm kind of saying is that I shouldn't have to go to an IMAX theater to appreciate the movie, the quote unquote the proper way it's due, and I like there's and going to the audio part, there were some parts that were just like jarring. But and the original movie was jarring too, but in a different. It was jarring of like look at this, And the new movie, it was like, maybe it's just because I'm older, but it was like a tone that was like made me have a headache, and it was so loud. It was like having an air horn in my ear, and it was like so it like bothered me in that respect too. So. I don't know. Maybe I just had a bad experience watching the movie. I don't know. So
what's really curious about that is a lot of the stuff that I've read is they've used a lot of like background ambient noises were cut from both like the original Blade Runner and a lot of stuff from like other Ridley Scott films like Alien and Aliens and all that stuff. So like I wonder if you go back and watch those now, if you'll kind of like, oh man, maybe this stuff is kind of annoying to me now, or if it is just that day, or like you said, had a bad experience at that point in time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and like I said, it wasn't the actual audio sounds of like background things happening. It was the soundtrack or yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna kind of wrap it up. There's a lot to unpack with this movie. Yeah. There is a lot. I mean, we're condensing not only a 3-hour movie, but a 5-hour universe, essentially, into basically just 45 minutes. Again, if you want us to talk more in depth, let us know. I'm sure we actually have a lot more to say about this. We did not even scratch the surface. Overall, though, if you had to give it a grade point, what would you give it, Scotty?
Oh man, like I said, it's hard for me to say, like, because I don't want to call it mediocre, but I'd give it like a 7.5. Like, I mean, 7.5 out of 10. Just because, I know like it shouldn't be the basis of your movie, but I do have to give a lot of props to the cinematography in this movie and how great everything looked, and the fact again that like, I mean, it just stayed true to the original, and so like I can't really hate on this movie because it was so true to the original, because that's how I felt about the original. I'd give the original a 7.5 as well. And so that's exactly what I expected out of this movie, and so I don't feel it let me down in any way. I don't feel like it did anything to like bring me in more. I feel like it just,
like, if they made another one, you'd probably go see it just to watch it again.
Yeah, but I mean, if they did a third one, and
which will never happen.
Yeah. But if they did, and they stated the same way, like, hey, it's just a continuation as well, whatever, I'd still probably go see it, and I'd still probably come out exactly the same. Like, this movie's just right above that average point for me, because like it does everything right. It's just not very captivating to me.
So what do you consider average? Like, what number? Because I would have considered like 5 an average.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, it is not.
But 7.5 is like a lot
like it's not
an average.
It's not right down the middle for me, like I said, because those movies that I would give a 5 to are the ones that still don't quite captivate me, but also don't kind of make up for it in other ways. Like, this one makes up for it in the fact that like the acting's all done really well. You can tell the director did a really good job in this movie. On the cinematography and all that stuff, I'm not wanting to like boot this movie down just because it wasn't for me. Like, I'm just saying what I would just give this movie as like a unbiased opinion, I guess I would give it like a 7.5 out of 10, because it may not have captivated me. I can understand how somebody would say, oh, this movie was perfect, it was amazing, but they probably felt that way about the original. And I didn't. So
what about you, Joe?
Me, I would probably give it a solid 9. There were I really liked the movie, but there were, like, for example, some of those cityscapes with the flying, like the overviews of things took a little bit longer. So I mean, there was definitely a lot more lulls in this one versus the original. And I can definitely agree with that. And the time is very long. It's one of those movies, like if you're a huge fan of Lord of the Rings and you know those movies, those are time investments. And as much as I love the movie, it is a movie I will watch multiple times. It is a movie I would actually have to second guess. It's like, do I really want to start it now?
I think the only way I would watch it again is probably like if y'all bought it in 4K Blu-ray and like came over and want to watch it like that way.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. Like, and this is a movie I will probably watch multiple times on my own. I mean, I really liked it, but there were obviously those kind of. I mean, it is a very long movie, and there were a couple points I was just kind of like, it's okay. But yeah, I mean, from the acting, the writing, the cinematography, the soundtrack, all those different things, I really liked that. So for me, it's a solid 9 out of 10. How about you, Patrick?
3.5.
I think to be fair, I think he'd probably give it about a 4 or 5.
Yeah.
If I had to be fair, because I think he gave it some praise.
Yeah,
but I would say it was not enough to really like start making it above average.
Yeah, like I'm trying to compare it to like other movies. Like, all right, so what do I consider average movies of like for in general? And a lot of people like love the Marvel movies, but there's a couple of the Marvel movies I'm like the Thor movies. I'm like that's a 5. You know, the second one's probably a 6, a little bit better.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say it's a lot better.
But but in general, like I have no intention on rewatching the original Thor at all in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing about it that makes me want to rewatch it. I mean, honestly, I lean towards a 4. That's probably what I lean towards. But like I said, like it's gorgeous. So like from a visual perspective, I give it like a 9. But that can't be the only thing that draws me into watching a movie. Right. The story has to draw me into watching the movie. Otherwise, there's no point. And so, I don't know. Like, I think that 4, 3.5, 4 is probably what I'd give it.
So, that is Blade Runner 2049. It really is. And this is actually, I think I really enjoyed this discussion more than some of the other ones. Because I think with this one is we got a lot of different views from it. And I think this is one reason why I like it so much is you can get all those different views from this kind of movie. It draws in a lot of different opinions. But yeah, if you have not seen the original Blade Runner, and this is not a wonderfully bad movie. It's a good movie, in my opinion. That's why I put the caveat, my opinion. Right, yeah. You should check it out. Even if you don't like it.
I mean, I would say definitely check it out.
You should at least check it out. It was one of those really...
Set aside a Sunday. Go eat something.
The original Blade Runner?
No, I'm talking about this one.
Well, yeah, I was talking about the original. Real quick. Yeah, I was saying, as far as original, like just go watch the original if you haven't seen it. Yeah. It's a good movie. But if you don't know if it's your cup of tea, it's one of those movies that I think really set the stage for a lot of interesting ideas going forward. So check it out. I think it's definitely worth a watch, and it'll definitely tell you if you're going to really want to go see this new one.
I mean, honestly,
it's an easier.
I think if you really wanted to, if you went to go see the second one first, I don't think you would lose. I mean, I don't think you don't, because you don't really need to know anything about the original. They explain everything that happens, and apparently, we didn't even mention that there's apparently a short films, 3 different short films that you can watch explaining what happens before this movie even comes out, which would make this movie about a 3-hour and 15-minute movie.
so either way, though, check out the original. I think it's at least if you have not watched any of the Blade Runner, check out the original. It's shorter. It's 2 hours.
Yeah,
and it gives you the basic idea of what the world they're building, and it'll give you a good idea if you really want to check out the new one. I think you should check out the new one regardless, but I think the original Blade Runner with Harrison Ford would give you a better idea if that's going to be your style or not.
It'd be interesting to get a perspective of someone who just watched the new one and that's it.
Well, that'd be true too.
Yeah,
that's true too. But yeah, let us know what you think. Comment. Let us know what's going on.
Post it to our Facebook page. Yeah, because I'm sure that y'all have varying opinions too.
So. Yeah. So and we are interested to hear what you have to say. I don't think there's anything else.
No, we're good.
This is Joe Depew,
Scotty P,
and Patrick.
Midnight Reel signing off.
All 3 of you were being a bunch of little assholes. I was the only reasonable one.